Good evening, and thank you for joining us on Global Columbus. My name is Soofe with City of Columbus Community Relations Commission and Mayor Michael B. Coleman's New American Initiative. And tonight, I am your host for this edition of Global Columbus, featuring tonight the Somali language class at The Ohio State University, Echo Club, a Nigerian diaspora from Lagos, and the Bhutanese Nepali community of Columbus. Joining me tonight is Femi Igbalajobi. He is the president of the Echo Club, the Nigerian diaspora from Lagos. Yeah. Mr. Femi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Abdi.
Also, Jibril Muhammad he teaches a Somali language class at The Ohio State University. He's also joining us at the studio tonight. Jibril, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Abdi.
You're very welcome. And also, Mr. Ganesh Gamire is a board member with the Bhutanese Nepali community of Columbus. Mr. Gamire, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
And tonight we have this very unique, diverse panel. We'll be talking about culture, language, and more. Let me start, before we get started, let me ask each one of you to briefly introduce yourself and your background, your work, and how you came to Columbus. We start with Femi again.
Well, thank you, Abdi. I work with limited brands. I'm an analyst. I'm an inventory deployment and demand analyst for limited brands. I've been with limited brands for 14 years since I've been in Ohio, in the U.S., and since I've been in Ohio. So I've been working for them for 14 years. I am the current president of Echo Club. My background in terms of education, I have a master's in information system management from Keller Graduate School, and that's what I use right now. My initial training was in architecture when I was in Nigeria and in Lagos, and here I am more of a systems guy. I'm the current president of Echo Club Ohio, a chapter of the Echo Club International, which is a community-based organization that spans the whole of the U.S., Canada, and United Kingdom.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
You're very welcome. Jibril?
Thank you, Abdi. Again, my name is Jibril Muhammad. I teach Somali language and culture at the Ohio State University, and I have a master's in public policy from the John Galani School of Public Affairs at the Ohio State University. I'm also doing my PhD right now at the Ohio State. I am delighted to be in this show, and I will be hoping that we will share a lot of insightful comments throughout the show. Thanks.
Absolutely. Mr. Gamire?
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Ganesh Gamire. I'm born and raised in Bhutan, but I got my education in India. I did my law degree from India, and I worked for almost 8 years as a lawyer in India. But I have worked for almost 20 years in the community service as a teacher in the refugee school, as a community development volunteer. And I was in Texas before, I came here in 2009 with my family. I worked as a resettlement case manager. Thereafter, I moved to Columbus, Ohio in October 2012. So I worked for Ohio State as a Nepali, Hindi, and Bengali interpreter. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdi, for inviting me. We have a Bhutanese community. We have around 6,000 Bhutanese Nepali community living in Columbus right now. So thank you for inviting us.
6,000 indeed.
Yes.
And I remember a few years ago it was only a couple of hundred.
Yes, we started coming from mid-2008, so now we have almost 6,000 plus people living in Columbus, and we are expecting another 1,000 by the end of the year, hopefully.
Is this immigration directly to Columbus, or is this the reason of secondary immigration?
Mostly, I believe, is a secondary migration because, like my case, I was located in Texas before, but because of my family and friends, we moved to Columbus because this is a friendly city. We find it, and that's why we are moving. And a lot of Bhutanese people are moving to Columbus. We invite them, we welcome them.
Indeed. Jibril, talk to me about the Somali class. When was it founded? I remember it was a few years ago when the Ohio State University established. Tell us a little bit about the Somali class.
The Somali class at the Ohio State came as a result of the big Somali community that's here in Columbus. Obviously, the children of immigrants will have difficulty speaking and reading and writing Somali language, and therefore it was expected that parents would encourage their kids who are second-generation immigrants to study Somali and retain their heritage language. But also, there is high demand for Somali. It's one of the national security languages that are very critical. It's demarcated as very critical by the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of State. And we have made a big improvement in the language program to the extent that now someone can come and get a minor in Somali language and culture from the Ohio State University. We also have an option for people who are not enrolled with the university to seek Somali language from the university through our continuous education programming. So we have 2 professors at the Ohio State for the Somali language and culture, and myself and Muhammad Omar. And it's a very fascinating language, very easy to learn. The script is in Latin, so if you can read and write English, you will be able to learn how to read and write Somali very easily. And the variations between the 2 languages are very minor. The sounds of X and C and things like that, sounding differently in the Somali language. So that's the Somali program.
So you call it Somali class? I know that's the form I ask you the question, or do you Somali program, Somali course? What's the name?
It is the Somali program at the
Somali
Ohio State University.
Somali
We have
programs.
more classes than just a class.
Okay.
We have up to a minor, so somebody can get a minor in Somali language and culture from the Ohio State University. And right now, we are working towards making it a major, so that somebody can actually enroll at the Ohio State
And major
for
in
Somali language and culture and graduate with Bachelor of Arts degree in Somali language and culture.
Very interesting. Mr. Femi,
Yes,
talk
please.
to me about Echo Club. When was it founded?
Echo Club was founded in 1997 by a group of Lagosians, because Echo is the indigenous name of Lagos, which used to be the capital of Nigeria as a country. And now we can still call it our commercial center. So most of the Lagosians, that's indigenous from Lagos, came together and started thinking about how do we help people back home in Nigeria, and also how do we form a community, a group of us to be able to relate in this foreign land as at that time. So that led to the beginning of Echo Club. And we currently have 19 chapters all over the world.
19 chapters.
Yes, and we're still growing. We're in Canada.
Tell
and
me,
the United
Columbus is the headquarters.
Well, incidentally, Columbus is hosting the world.
Okay.
We're hosting the world the next
This convention coming up. I know
coming
you
up
told me.
in
Okay.
September.
Okay.
And it's a good thing. Like Mr. Jumeirah said, this is a very beautiful city, and
Absolutely.
we want to showcase this city to all Lagosians and the world in general, how we can be hospitable.
And speaking of Lagosians, I think we have a video clip that was actually videotaped, provided by Echo Club, and we will show that if we have it in a second. Yep, right there. There it is. Yes.
In the video clip, you're seeing a major cultural asset in Lagos. This is the Eyo Festival. The Eyo Festival is majorly owned and solely done by Lagosians. And when you see us come out, it's a way to actually bless the city as the Eyo masquerade passes through all the city. It's believed to be cleaning off all things that are in the city, all the ills of the city, all ailments and everything go with the Ayo festival. So it's a very, very important cultural part of our country, of Lagos. And incidentally, as we welcome the world to Columbus, the Thursday of the convention, that is going to be our showcase because it's a cultural night to welcome everybody.
Here in Columbus?
Here in Columbus. So you're going to see the Ayo Festival coming out
Very
here in
interesting.
Columbus.
Jibril, why Somali language is so important to be taught in the university, especially the Ohio State University?
Somali and Somalia is on the top list of national interest in the United States. It's a priority country and a priority language for the government of the United States of America. As such, Somali provides an endless opportunity to get employed if you know the language. It provides an endless opportunity to communicate with people who speak Somali. And above all, Columbus has the second largest Somali community in the United States, estimated at 45,000 people. And that community offers an ample opportunity for people who are students in Somali language and culture to practice the language with the residents of Columbus, going to the restaurants, going to the shopping malls, playing soccer with Somalis, studying with Somalis. It becomes easier and more convenient for one to study Somali. It's very rewarding to study Somali in Columbus because you can meet a Somali-speaking person maybe several times a week or so if you live in Columbus.
But the language itself is relatively new when it comes to when it was established in early 1970s. And soon it's going to be a major in the academic programs here in the Ohio State University. What has that changed? And you mentioned the U.S. government being priority in the Somali. Why is it so priority? Why is it so important?
Now, Somali language, the language is not new. The language existed for very many years and since history, and the language is very rich. It has a very beautiful poetry. It has very beautiful stories and methodology and all of that. Mm-hmm. It is a very rich and beautiful language that is spoken by almost 20 million people in the Horn of Africa and elsewhere. Now, that being said, Somali language writing, the script that's used today.
That's what's new?
That's new.
Okay.
That was established in 1973 by the government of Somalia then. Before that, Somali did not have a specific script that one was able to use. So people invented another way to pass their culture and heritage through poetry. And that poetry...
Is that where the name came from, the Nation of Poets?
That is correct. It's the Nation of Poets. And that Nation of Poets is... You can find a woman who is a poet, a young man who is a poet, an old man who is a poet. And those who are not poets have some poetry in their minds that they cannot forget.
Indeed.
They can recite it from their heads. So Somali poetry is not written. It comes from somebody's life most of the time. Somebody says the words and the structure and everything. It has very strict rules, and somebody has to be able to create poetry that complies with all of those rules. Now, prior to the invention of the Somali script in the 1970s, Somalis did not have a language to write to each other to. So they used Arabic and English and Italian and other languages. In 1973, in addition to adopting a language, a script, the government also initiated a widespread campaign to promote literacy in the Somali language.
So at the time, you're saying that we tend to think that the Somalis are nomadic communities, but they used to speak Italian, used to write in Italian and English and Arabic at the time?
That is correct. Somalis had a long history of doing business with the Middle East, with India, with other countries. So Somalia is located right at where the Indian Ocean meets the Red Sea, and that is a very strategic position to be.
Commercially.
since the pharaohs of Egypt, Somalis were the main source of frankincense and other products from for the gods of the Egyptians and all of that. So, with the adoption of the Somali language, the literacy rate in Somalia became one of the highest in Africa. It went to 75% within a few years' time, by 1978.
Absolutely.
And
it is very, very interesting thought. I'm going to get back with you in a second, but let me talk to Mr. Gimire. Your community did a very interesting program, a celebration for the New Year celebration 2070. Matter of fact, we're in 2013 now, but your community is much ahead of us. Talk to me about that.
Yes, actually we have a different calendar. Now we're running 2070, so it's called a Bikram Sambat. So our New Year falls somewhere in the month of April. So it doesn't always fall on 13th or 14th sometimes, because we have some months we have 28 days also, some months we have 30 days. So that way, so we have 12 months.
Is it the Georgian calendar?
No, it's a totally different calendar. It's called Bikram Sambat. So that's why. So we celebrated New Year last time. I mean, this time in April 13th. So we are running now. This is our third month now.
Okay.
So
beautiful. How many people attended that convention?
yeah, approximately like 600 plus people had attended, but we had some issues regarding transportation because we're kind of a new community. We are kind of getting organized, but still more than 600 people attended that program.
Is this the moon? Has anything to do with the moon, like some of other cultures do, or is this a man-made calendar?
No, exactly. This is totally different. This is kind of a secular. This is secular, and so this is basically a New Year, like English New Year. So we celebrate, and almost like Nepali community. Our history dates back to Nepal, and like. So we had different feudal lords and different, so the emigrations took place from Nepal and, located in different parts of India, Bhutan, Burma also, but we still celebrate, and there's a kind of a coherent, thing common to all Nepali. So we celebrate the New Year, and we have a festival coming in this October. This is a Hindu festival.
Remind our audiences one more time. I know I introduced you as being the Bhutanese Nepali community. So the Bhutan is a different nation than Nepal. How your community became having the two nationalities? Explain to me.
Basically, Nepali is a language. That's why, when we say Nepali, people misunderstand as being a citizen of Nepal. But we are not citizens of Nepal. We are citizens of Bhutan. So Bhutan basically has 3 different languages. People in the eastern Bhutan speak different languages. There is Sangla, or also called Satsukpa. People in northern Bhutan especially speak Dzongkha, the official language of Bhutan, northern western Bhutan. And in southern Bhutan, predominantly occupied by Nepali. They are also called Lochampas. Lochampas means people living in the southern side. So we speak Nepali. So Bhutan basically was a virgin land, like northern part of Bhutan was occupied by people from Tibet. They came down because they were infighting in Tibet. Feudal lords were, they were pushing people in the south. So, and there was a need for a border security that was filled by feudal lords in northern Bhutan. So they thought that, well, Nepal were known for Gorkhas, and so British were recruiting Gorkhas. They were brave, so they thought, well, why don't we talk to Gorkha people? And so they went, Sabdrung Nau Namgyal in 1616, he went to a kingdom of Nepal, that was called Gorkha state. He went and he brought some people to Bhutan. They were basically artisans. They were making...
so those same people remain to become the Nepalese.
Exactly.
The ethnic Nepali.
Yes, that was the first official group of people who came to Bhutan. That dates back to 1616. And they brought their relatives, families, and finally southern Bhutan was occupied, and they were paying revenues, they were giving security and border security. So Bhutan was kind of very secure in terms of, the southern border was occupied by Gorkha people. They speak Nepali language. So that's how Nepali, became existent in Bhutan.
That's very interesting. How does it became possible for the community to maintain and sustain their identity and language for so long?
Basically, we were isolated, a community till late maybe 50s in Bhutan.
Okay.
So we used to have interaction amongst our people only. Government was, and only after the first 5-year plan was, implemented in Bhutan, and the third king of Bhutan started, integrating people, and that's the only time when, Bhutan, was known to the outside world, and the different communities existed. So we also knew that, well, we had different communities, and so that's how we became part of the Bhutanese community. So we are Bhutanese, but we speak Nepali. That's why we are called Bhutanese Nepali. If you say only Nepali, they take it as people of Nepal. That's why we call ourselves as Bhutanese Nepali.
That's very interesting. Brother Femi,
Yes, please.
Talk to me about, I know a lot of your community goes back and forth, and I know Echo Club did such a humanitarian programs in Nigeria, in Lagos, Lagosians.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
One of our major projects we do every 2 years is we go back there. We call it a medical mission to Nigeria. And we go back there to Nigeria into Lagos, and we go into the old Lagos counties where the underprivileged are being served. We give medical attention and give drugs and things like that. This last one, incidentally, was actually chaired by the last president of Echo Club, Ohio, Honorable Fatai Adeshiji. He chaired the program to Lagos, and we instituted also, created a hunger program there.
So that was initiated here in Columbus.
Yeah, it was initiated in Columbus. Also, we have talking about languages, because I must say also that the Yoruba language, which is predominantly what we speak in Lagos, is also being sponsored at Ohio State University right now. Not as deep as the Somalian. There's a club here which we support, the Yoruba Club 21, which is also from the same region as us in Nigeria, and we're a group of same people from the western part of Nigeria. And they, in honor of one of the late Professor Owomoyela, instituted the teaching of Yoruba language with the Institute of Strategic Studies at Ohio State University. That's great. Ohio State University is actually, like we all have identified, the city of Columbus, Ohio in general, things like that. It's a warm city. They are encouraging all these languages.
What's the national language in Nigeria?
We have 3 main languages.
Okay, Yoruba, Hausa.
Yoruba.
Okay, Yoruba, Hausa.
Hausa and Igbo.
Igbo.
And it's a split those are the 3 main languages. It's a split between the regions. The western region, the eastern region. The west, where I come from, is the Yoruba.
What's the centralized
English.
English, okay.
Because we were a British colony, pretty much that got cascaded back to all of us. The eastern part of Nigeria speaks Igbo. The northern part speaks Hausa. So those are the 3 main languages. In my country, we call it Wazobia. It's Wa is come in my language. Zo is come in Hausa language, and Bia is come in Igbo language.
So it's Wazobia.
Yeah, that's why we call it Wazobia.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Jibril, if I were to learn the Somali language, how long does it take? How fast can I learn the language?
It depends on your effort, how much energy and interest you have for the language. But we guarantee on day 1, when you come to the class, you leave with some sentences that make sense, that you can speak, that you have practiced with fellow students. And by the end of week 1, you will be able to read and write Somali comfortably. Now, let me share this story. One day, I took my 4-year-old to a playground in Ghana. And I meet this young woman who has children playing in the playground for her. And she says to me, Galab Wanaagsan, which means good afternoon in Somali. And I respond to her and I ask her how she came to know.
With an accent or?
No, with no accent, clear. Yeah. And I ask her how she came to know Somali. And she tells me the story. It happens that her husband is one of my students at the Ohio State.
Oh, that's
And I ask her, how did she catch it? How did she manage to learn a language that she did not come to class to learn? And she said, the husband practices on me. And because of that practice, she was able to speak Somali. By the way, it was more interesting to see the kids calling her Hoyo in Somali, Mom in Somali, because this gentleman was so determined, so committed to the study of the language that
the whole family with him.
he galvanized his whole family and made sure that every one of them speaks the language. So it depends on how much effort you put in the language and how much time you spend in the community and talk with people and have conversations and do your own self-study and follow the curriculum that is given by the Ohio State.
But people say in a year or so you can learn Arabic, English. I mean, I know I had a tough time, still having some issues. Does same thing applies in your language, Mr. Gimire?
I believe, I think Nepali is the easiest of all the languages. Easiest.
Or so you think?
Yes,
Okay.
because I have a friend, in course of my work, in Texas, a Burmese friend, unknown to Nepali, and in a couple of weeks started greeting me, and he's talking and he's calling also. Now he says, well, how is your baby? And how is your wife? How is your family? And
In Nepali.
In Nepali, and without any accent. So I assure you.
But I bet you when it comes to writing, it's a different story.
Yeah, it's of course difficult with writing, but
Okay.
in speaking, it's very, very easy. It's very easy.
Okay. Very interesting. On Yoruba language, is it written or people use English?
Yoruba has been a language where you can write a very, very long time ago. I can't remember when you can write it. We have the Bible in Yoruba. So a long time ago, way before I was born. So it's been an indigenous language.
So you have the written form.
Yeah, we have it. All the three languages have written form. And that is why it's easy to teach. We're teaching the Wazobia, like I said.
In the classes.
They're teaching them in the classes in Nigeria, in elementary school. And they're teaching alternate languages. So if you're schooling in the West, you're forced to learn the Igbo language or the Hausa language if you're speaking vice versa in the other areas. So to create a form of emancipation of all the people.
Indeed. Now talk to me about the similarities, or similarities for that matter, in your schools, your native language, in terms of English as part of your instructions, academic instructions or the curriculum. I know Nigeria has it. What about Nepal and Somalia?
Okay, let me say it about Somalia. When Somalia had a government, Somali was the language of instruction from the first grade up until the 12th grade. Now, Arabic was also introduced in the first grade, so you would learn Arabic as a subject.
But not English?
Not English. English was introduced at high schools.
High school.
So when you get to the 9th grade, you can start studying English, and
Indeed.
that was the process in Somalia.
What about Nepal?
Nepali is a very advanced language in terms of writing. So you can do, you have medium instructions in Nepali in the entire Nepal.
Was English taught?
English is also taught as a second language. And Nepali, you can do your master's, you can do your PhD in Nepali. So Nepali is an advanced language to some, so that's why you have everything in Nepali now.
Indeed. And if you're just joining us, we are discussing on a very diverse panel on culture, language, and more. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
There's always a moment. The moment you decide to get involved. to get engaged.
This is my
American story.
When you teach someone to read, they have a sense of self-fulfillment.
Seeing family, friends fall victim to gang violence, drugs, it definitely made me want to serve.
There was a hole in the ground, and by the time we left, there was a house.
I realized that these kids were not getting a meal.
It is so easy to give back.
I don't have a lot of money to help people, but I do have something. I have time.
You can give any skill you have.
Get up and do something.
Just imagine how strong a society we could be.
Every one of us has a role to play in making our communities and our country stronger. Discover yours. Help us continue to make a difference in the life of our nation. Go to serve.gov and find the opportunity that works for you. And this message is brought to you by the Corporation for National and Community Service.
Does retirement have to wait until my 70s? Is a great college for our kids?
Out of the question?
Is the American dream
Out of our reach?
Not if we can help it. We're the National Endowment for Financial Education, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping people just like you get smart about their money. Log on to smartaboutmoney.org today and start taking control of your financial life.
When I grow up, I want to be a psychologist or a therapist.
I want to be a pediatrician.
I was hoping to become a chef someday.
I want to own a big house with the convertible and the jacuzzi and the pool, you know, all the good stuff.
Role models, they don't tell you what to do, but they help you to go where you're going.
I want to study law. I don't want to become a lawyer. I want to become a CIA agent.
Young people, I think, do need a mentor because, you know, we don't know everything. And, you know, all the people, they've experienced stuff that we haven't.
I would like to be a baseball player.
As long as there's somebody behind you, pushing you and supporting you, then you feel that you always have the strength to keep going.
Well, I would like to become like a doctor. That's my first choice.
Sometimes you feel down and you feel that no one really understands and no one knows like where you're coming from. And it's great to see someone who's been where you are now and, you know, making it.
Each of our children has hopes and dreams for their future. Help them get there. Become a mentor.
Welcome back. We're discussing with a diverse panel this evening on culture, language, and more. Thanks for having us tonight on Global Columbus. Femi, talk to me about the Nigerian language and cultures and what advice that you would have for the school officials in terms of those young generation going to the schools and their teachers.
The Nigerian language, like I mentioned earlier on, we have 3 main languages. But in actuality, when you look at how many languages we have in Nigeria, it's probably over 300 languages. Because we have, just within the Yoruba sector alone, you have several variations of the language, of the Yoruba language. And same, you have the Benin language, just even in the Western region, so many more too. What you find out is we, by design, we do all our basic education in English in Nigeria. So it's easy for us to translate our learnings when we get here or abroad in English-speaking areas. But I've had friends who came from French-speaking countries that have had issues translating the English, how they communicate here, because one of the things they go through is reprocessing from French back to English before they can speak. Unlike us, we're processing one way. From my local language, I can process into English when English is what I was trained in. But for them, they trace back to French language and then they retranslate back.
Anything about the Nigerian culture that we should be aware of that might help the school officials that should know? Or is it just like any other English-speaking nations, it's very common?
We're very common, just like every other English-speaking country. They only basic thing is we seem to be very, very heavier when we speak, and people tend to think, oh, is he annoyed? Is he mad? They tend to hear your voice and think, oh, he's shouting. We speak loud and clear enough so that people can hear us, but it's mistaken most times as in our containers is given a different
someone
meaning.
actually, someone from other parts of Africa told me the only time you maintain eye contact is when you want to pick a fight with someone. So you speak you speak louder doesn't mean that you have some issues. Moving on to Jibril, any tips for language learners, the easier way to learn for the Somali language, or any tips for the school officials, things that school officials should be aware?
Now, Somali language is, as I said, a very easy to learn language in terms of its reading and writing. There are very few variations between, the letters are the same. You can use the same keyboard that you use to type English to type your own Somali scripts. Now, in terms of the school districts, I have received many suggestions from parents, from students who came to the US recently, from professionals in the academic field, that are suggesting, and I agree with them, that it would be beneficial for Somali language to be introduced in high schools in Columbus, for example. Because many times when I served as an interpreter in academic institutions, I saw and met students who are taking the OGT exam in Somali. The document is translated into Somali, but the student does not have a sufficient grasp of the Somali language itself. So they don't know the scientific words in the Somali language. They don't know the terminology of math in Somali. Therefore, they would not be able to do as well as they would have done if they have gone through a process of academic instruction in Somali. So I think it would be very beneficial in terms of promoting our educational outcomes right here in Central Ohio. And the good thing about Somali is that it's the language spoken by Somalis, and almost every Somali will be able to understand you if you spoke Somali.
Absolutely. Now, more often I see people ask me, where are you from? Or are you from Somalia? And somehow I must look like other, some people have some resemblances, the same region, like Ethiopia and Somalia. The same thing applies to India and Pakistan. And I think there has to be some way those people in the same nation or a country can identify which regions they belong to. Is there a such thing in your nation? And I will start with this applies for everyone. We start with Mr. Gamira.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, because when you talk of Bhutan, like we have one nation, one people policy. The Bhutan government is trying to promote that but we belong to a Nepali community, so we have our culture. That's why I am with my hat today. My cap here. This identifies myself with being a Nepali. And
but
so,
if you not have that, can people still identify you as being a Nepali?
Exactly. From the language I speak, this language is spoken in some parts of India, almost southern part of Bhutan, entire Nepal, and some part of Burma also.
What about the physical characteristics?
Physical, we have a traditional Nepali dress. So definitely, I'm only with this one now, but we have a traditional, typical Nepali dress. So this is what, and yeah, this is how we identify ourselves as a Nepali.
Absolutely. Jibril?
I think Somali is spoken in 3 different countries, in fact 4 different countries in the Horn of Africa. Somalia, that's the language of instruction, the language of the nation, the language of government. It's the main language. It's also spoken in Djibouti. It's spoken in a region in Ethiopia and a region in Kenya. Now, if you see the Somali flag, it's a sky blue with a white star in the middle. The white star has 5 points, and those 5 points represent the 5 regions of Somalia. 2 of them combine to make up the Republic of Somalia. One is Djibouti, one is in Ethiopia, one is in Kenya. Now, what the colonial system did to Somalia and the Somali nation was different from what it did to other countries. For example, in Kenya, they have 42 different tribes that speak different languages and have different cultures, different faith structures, and different ways of living. Now, the British system, the British government that colonized Kenya, brought them together under one umbrella, that is Kenya. And I can't imagine Kenya being a nation without the British colonization. Now, on the other hand, in Somalia, we had one nation with one language, with one culture, with one religion.
It was divided.
That was divided into 5 by the colonial system.
Absolutely. Now, with those 5 regions, let's say one person comes from the north. Can the southern Somali person recognize that because of the facial, characteristics, or have you that this person is from different region, or everybody looks the same?
There are differences in accent. There are differences in word usage sometimes between different regions.
Okay.
But they would be able to communicate comfortably with each other. It's one language, one structure, one system. But there are words that one group uses. I mean, if a community is largely farmers, I mean agricultural community that produces crops and seeds, while the other community is a pastoral community that has camels and goats.
Of course.
They have different ways of describing and expressing themselves.
Practice.
So that difference exists, and the distance between the north and the south is so wide that somebody from the north would not sound very like somebody who is from the Kenyan boundary Somalis.
Indeed. Femi, same question.
Yeah.
Can you tell which one is from the north or which one is from the west?
I think that would be a function of who's interpreting the looks.
Okay.
But as you speak, you can figure out if it's is from the east, from the west, from the north. Prior to Common Time, we used to have we had tribal marks that will actually almost showcase where you come from. But those are wearing off, so there are several cultures that they're living that out. The new ones that they're giving back to don't have tribal marks. Some of us also do not wear tribal marks at all culturally. So you won't be able to tell, but as we speak, the language we open up with, you can decipher if I'm from a Yoruba clan or the Igbo clan or I'm an Hausa. Plus, there are some trades that are associated to some groups in Nigeria. Nigeria is a country of over 150 million people. Lagos alone, where I come from, is over 20 million people.
Wow.
So yeah, so you can imagine what is transparent. Lagos, because it's a cultural center, it's a commercial center for the country, has every tribe around living there. So
now you guys all grew up and educated in your own native language and nearby neighboring countries, what have you. Tell me what you found frustrating, or maybe thought you would have done it differently in your nation, culturally or language-wise, or what have you, when you came first here in the U.S., or in Columbus for that matter. Mr. Gimire first.
Okay, first of all, what I would, as a Nepali community person, what I would personally do is educate my, kids with my Nepali as a mother tongue, mother language, so that the person becomes fluent with the mother, and English and maybe some other, maybe Spanish, they can learn later.
So you find it difficult?
They don't find it difficult, because, I grew up, when I was in 20s, I learned 2 different languages. So when I believe, as a kid, when you are in school, if you teach them Nepali at home to speak and write, maybe at least for 4 or 5 years at the elementary level, thereafter you go for other languages, so then you become fluent in other languages also, you learn. Okay. So at least a person can be fluent in at least 4 languages, that's what I believe.
Okay.
So I would emphasize on that, because by learning the language you can learn your culture also. You know how to interact, because language itself teaches you a lot of things.
Jibril? Most frustrating things, or you thought it was weird, culturally or language-wise?
I think in my case, I would say I was very privileged to be
already exposed
and to be able to speak and read and write English. I had a degree from an English-speaking institution where the medium of instruction was English. Now, one issue that I see a lot is that I was just speaking about teaching Somali in high schools. The Somalis in, for example, Somalia or in neighboring countries, just because there are not public education systems and access to education as such, many of the young people are not spending a lot of time learning in their own language. Now, I think that's a mistake. If they study in their own language, read books as much as they can, there are curriculums from the previous system that are available in math, in chemistry, in physics, and everything. If they get that, that's a very good foundation for an academic journey that can be rewarding if somebody is really interested in learning. Now, what you find rather is that somebody has been, for example, in Ethiopia or in Kenya or in Uganda for many years waiting for resettlement to the US, but they have not gone to school, they haven't done anything, they think the language is going to be revealed on them, but it doesn't happen. They struggle when they come here.
Now, do you want to take the same question?
Yeah.
Most frustrating, okay.
Frustrating, I would say maybe because most of us learned English in Queen's English, which you know the spellings are a little bit different from the American English.
Some terms, some names.
Yeah, and some names. And then you have pronunciations and things like that, which you have to relearn here too. You're 75% there, but I think one key thing in our different curriculums, because we got trained in ways where from our primary and secondary education, you're trained to be detailed in your summary, in how you put things together, completely detailed. Here, you're expected to give high level or specific deliveries based off of the audience you're filtering to or you're communicating to. Here, that's a lot of learning. I mean, it's different. Everything we did was more in terms of context questions they give you. You have to build a story, build everything before you can answer it. So.
Absolutely. Now, I have heard many times people saying, based on their, especially for those who speak the language, English language as a second language, or maybe the third language, that when in communicating the language, they have to take the time to process the thought, because first they have to think on their own native language and then change something, and with that delays comes. And talk to me about that, Mr. Gimire. Does that happen to you?
Exactly, it happens to me, and I believe it happens to everyone, because however fluent you might be in different other languages, next to your mother tongue or native language, you got to think. First of all, you tend to speak in your language. Then there's reprocessing, like, okay, what do I need to say? Well, I need to have a kind of restrain myself a little bit. So I believe there is some processing needed, in order to give a prompt answer.
Jibril, does that happen to you?
It happens. I mean, every human being has something called points of reference. You have to refer to the concept in the original way in which you are introduced to it. So everything I know almost has been introduced to me in Somali. And because of that, when somebody speaks to me or when I talk, I have to think in my natural inner being and find out what I wanted to say and then describe it and express it in the English language or the Arabic language or any of the other languages that I may be able to speak.
Mr. Femi?
Yes, please. I think it's the same, regardless of how well trained you are in English language. If you've grown up in another language in which your regular day-to-day communication is in that language, you get to a point you want to say some things that, especially words that are not every day said. You can get lost in your thinking, and practically I've had times I've spoken Yoruba to my boss at work in terms of, oh, just say something, because we're communicating and we've been communicating for a while, and then I just interject with my language, and then I catch myself that, oh, I shouldn't. So
now,
it happens.
do you, when you dream, of course we all are humans, we do you dream in Yoruba or in English?
I don't think there's a language in the dream for me.
No, there has to be one. If there's any communication involved.
Well, it depends on who I'm dreaming about. If I'm dreaming about my friends here who are English speaking, I would think I will be dreaming in English.
Jibril?
I think most of my dreams are exclusively Somali.
For me, I always talk in Nepali. So though I speak other languages, in my dreams when I talk to somebody, I talk only in Nepali.
So that's the truth over there.
I won't think I will be trying to speak Yoruba to you.
That's very interesting. Now, and this is for everyone. Any word or phrase in the English language that has a similarity in terms of the sound, or maybe in the written form, that have a very similar in your own native language, but has a different meaning. Any thoughts? The word is written, you have the same word in your own native language, maybe sound is the same, but in different meanings.
Yeah, we do have in Nepali, we do have.
You want to talk about it?
It's offensive language, so I don't want to say that, but we do have a word, so it's very offensive.
Does that happen?
Yeah.
Of course, in Somali it happens. There are words that the Somali language and the English language share. If you come to somebody's house and say howdy, Somali would understand you. That is English as well. Now, there are words that in writing mean something in Somali. For example, beer in Somali, B-E-E-R, means a farm, or
in Somali,
yeah, or a leaf, or something else. Then the English language where it means a drink.
Well, I can't think of a word that will actually be like that in Yoruba language, but it might be available in the other two main languages. I don't know, but I can't think of it now.
And of course, there are those well-adopted technology-wise words and phrases, of course. But what is the biggest advantage of learning or having a language or being a bilingual?
I believe it's very much, like you can be, first of all, a help to a community where people don't speak. You can be a bridge. So you can connect with the English-speaking, community. So there's the one thing. And secondly, it helps you to learn about other cultures, how to be, how to cope with, the different situations in different cultures. So it always helps, you relate everything with your culture because you speak the other language, so you know the other expectations of other communities. So it always helps to be very friendly and, like in terms of being like we are talking about global community here in Columbus also. If I was not a bilingual, I would not have been able to, like be in this too. So this always advantages, being a bilingual.
Sure, there are many advantages. I mean, researchers say learning a new language or being bilingual can reduce the probability of getting diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia, being forgetful and all that. It gives you a mental exercise. It introduces you to new concepts and new ideas and new histories and new cultures.
Your brain.
In addition to that, there are job opportunities, plenty of them. Ohio hospitals, social service agencies, courts require Somali interpreters and translators frequently. And they pay very decently. They are some of the best paying jobs out there. So if you learn a new language, specifically if you learn Somali at Ohio State, it will be very rewarding. And in addition, if you're a business person, if you have your own clinic, if you have your own law office, learning Somali and knowing some Somali would be very helpful in your own job, in promoting your business, in getting customers and clients for your own business. So it's very rewarding in every respect.
Absolutely. Femi?
Yeah, I would say it broadens your horizon.
Absolutely.
For what Jumeirah and Jubilee mentioned, they're basically true, but in a nutshell, it broadens your horizon. It gives you more opportunities, and it makes you be able to at least understand how the other person is thinking, regardless of where he is or who he is in terms of culture, because you can understand that you have a different one from your immediate environment. Mm-hmm. So you can understand he can have a different way he's thinking too, you know. Right. So you'll be able to give them the opportunity to spend time to understand. It improves diversity and inclusion pretty much.
Why do some people learn the language, especially English language, so quickly, while some people took so long, or maybe are never able to learn or grasp the concept of learning the language? Also, why some people lose to forget their own native ethnic language and adopt this new language and forget about their past?
I believe there are two things. One is your necessity, and other one is your attitude. Mm-hmm. You know, if there is a necessity and you have a good attitude, mm-hmm. You can definitely learn a language, and you'll never forget your own language, because it depends on how well you could be in a different culture. You are definitely the person from your culture you're born with. So unless you know yourself, you can't know others. So it depends on the attitude and the necessity.
Absolutely. Jibril?
People face different barriers and have different potentials for learning. Not mm-hmm. only in language, it's the same reason why many people, go ahead to attain higher academic degrees while others don't do that. And learning a language is similar. Some people learn language quickly, others don't. Now, in terms of language loss, heritage language loss, that happens mainly to younger people. And the reason it happens to them is that, number one, they get discouraged because they are not fluent enough in the language. And people who are more fluent than them in that language might tease them, might say, hey, your Somali is broken, for example. Or what did you say many times in the course of a conversation, thereby distracting the whole conversation. So the child resorts to using the language in which they are more comfortable in. Mm. They end up using English for their parents, using English for their relatives, and that is what they have to do to be able to avoid all that embarrassment.
Embarrassment, indeed. Mr. Femi?
I think one of the keys of losing any learning is usage. So if you're not interacting regularly in your local language over time, you might lose it. And if you don't have a reason to communicate in that language, you actually, if I never speak Yoruba in the next 10 years, and then I'm made to say it after 10 years, even where I can pick the words, but I'm bringing them from memory rather than being fluent in them, because I'm not usually communicating in them. That is one reason.
Absolutely. Any contributions, resources, and programs that can help the educators better understand cultural competence? Jibril?
Oh, definitely. We have lots of resources. Somalican is a very big organization. We provide a graduation program. It's happening on the 9th of August at the Hilton Easton, and you will be able to find the information online. That will be able to, you will be able to engage the community and be part of.
And that information is on your website. I know your convention is coming up also on September. That is the end of our show. We will appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, Femi, Jibril, Guimira. Thank you so much for the opportunity of joining us tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.